What is up, guys? This is Michael from the Vol Fanatics Show. Tonight, I have got Jaron from Religiously Kentucky podcast. We're going to give you guys a little bit of an SEC tournament preview from our eyes. So, Jaron, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great. And how are you?
Oh, pretty good, man. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. Anytime I get to talk nonsense about sports, you just call me up. I'm here.
Hey, I'm right there with you. So tonight we're going to go through and we're going to give through our eyes what we think the strengths and weaknesses for each SEC team is going into the SEC tournament, what we feel like they need to do to succeed, and we're probably going to give a little bit of a prediction of what we think the SEC tournament is going to look like towards the end, who we think is going to win each game and who we think is going to win the tournament. So without further ado, we're going to start off with Missouri. Missouri has not had the greatest year this year. They're on an 18-game losing streak, going 0-18 in the conference. The only other team to ever do that was Vanderbilt. So Missouri is joining some rare company doing that. They finished the season 8-23. Jaron, what do you think some of the strengths of this Missouri team are?
They're a scrappy team. We'll put it that way. I don't know what's happened to this team from last year to this year, but my goodness, Dennis Gates came out on fire, and this year it's just kind of crap the bed, for lack of a better term. But they've got some, like I said, they're a scrappy team. They've got some guards who can get out there and give fits, but they're just right there. Not enough to get over that hump.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I tell you one thing is, they lost Kobe Brown last year. He was a big part of that Missouri team, and it seemed like every time that they needed a big bucket, I mean, here's Kobe, and
right.
I agree with you. They're a very scrappy team, and they don't give up, none whatsoever. They've played just about everybody close, and I know they gave Tennessee fits, and I thought for sure they were going to beat LSU the other night. They play really tough, but you mentioned it. They just can't quite get over that hump that they need to get the first win in conference.
Yeah, I think I don't want to speak for all Missouri fans, but I think I was cheering harder for Missouri these last 3 games they had, trying to get one win over LSU, over Ole Miss, any of them, but just couldn't do it. And let's just be realistic. Their chances in this tournament, I just don't see how they're going to be able to change things from what we saw the past 18 games, but you never know. With their backs against the wall, maybe they make some Cinderella run. Who knows? But I don't see it.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you, although I might have a little bit of a shock for you when we do our predictions. I don't know. But as far as weaknesses go, we could go any direction with the weaknesses for Missouri. They don't have that one go-to player, in my opinion, that a lot of these teams have. Kentucky is one of those teams blessed with 2 or 3 players. Tennessee, you got Dalton Connect, you got Mark Sears for Alabama. You got some of these go-to guys, and you don't have that go-to guy for Missouri, in my opinion. I think that's the biggest weakness.
Yeah, right. I mean, they had the SEC awards come out, and I think they had Sean East get Scholar Athlete of the Year, and that's essentially their condolence prize for the season.
Right. Yeah.
Guy averaged almost 18 points a game, and here you go. Here's a trophy at the end of the season. But aside from him, it's a whole lot of who you're going to get each night. Maybe they get 5 points from Nick Honor one night. Maybe it's 5 points from Bates, but it's hard to say you're going to get 10, 15 points from any other guy besides East.
Yeah. So as far as success for Missouri in the tournament, I guess what you would consider success would be getting that first win, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you can find a way to, I don't know that pulling an upset is what you would call it in the first round, but getting that one win and upsetting the higher seed.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes. Like I said before, I don't see how they're going to change a whole lot from what they did in the season. I would assume a lot of these guys probably mentally have checked out, but who knows? Maybe Dennis Gates has got something up his sleeve.
Yeah, he could have something up his sleeve, and I do think that Dennis Gates is a good coach.
Yeah.
I feel like this team, he lost so much from last year that they could never get it going. So, you have any other thoughts on Missouri?
I think the best thing for Missouri at this point is to go ahead and focus on that recruiting class they got coming in for next season. It's a heck of a class. Don't get too hung up on what this season was.
Yep, I agree with you. So let's move to a team who was not too much better, but a little bit better in the conference. 13 seed Vanderbilt. They did pull an upset the other night against Florida to move their conference record to 4-14. They are 9-22 overall. Vanderbilt is one of those teams that you're also for the most part going to get their best each and every night. They don't have a lot in the way of the post, which I guess I can save that for the weaknesses. But their strengths, they've got some pretty decent guard play. They get to the rim quite a bit. They're scrappy, just like Missouri is, and like I mentioned, you're going to get their best night in and night out.
Yeah, I don't. Vanderbilt was that team that I just enjoyed watching for a few games, and then it's like you look at them for some games, and it's like this team should be right up there in the thick of things. Maybe just on that outside of the top group, but overall I guess they don't have the depth. I'm not 100% sure, but they just couldn't get everything to click on any given night like some other teams could. They got a couple good guards, like you mentioned. Really, it's just that overall quality down. I think they got 3 guys who score in double figures, and then I think the next guy's down at like 7 or 8 points a game. So Vanderbilt's what Vanderbilt is. I know there's a lot of rumors around Stackhouse potentially being out after the end of the season. Don't want to speculate too much there, but maybe that's contributing to how these guys are playing. Who knows? But this is another team that I cannot really see them making a huge impact in this tournament, but it is Vanderbilt. They don't have their home court to fall back on, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I got a little story for you about Vanderbilt, Jerry Stackhouse. So, did you know that Jerry Stackhouse, each time they go on a road trip, he takes his golf clubs so that he can go golfing while they're on the road trip? So, that tells you where his mindset is going into each game right now.
Yeah, see, I cover Mississippi State and the SEC as a whole from a side gig. And when he did come to Mississippi State, I've heard that he had made his way down to the golf course. So I'm actually in the know for that one.
Yeah, so that's the biggest weakness in my mind is just Jerry Stackhouse. Just I feel like he's not locked in on this team like he should be. But I also mentioned the post play. When Tennessee played Vanderbilt in Nashville, I went to the game and it was all guards for Vanderbilt that was making the plays, whether it be hitting outside shots, whether it be driving to the hoop. It was just all guard play. There was I can't remember the post player's name. It's a white forward for Vanderbilt. He could step out and hit the 3, and he hit 2, I think, for Vanderbilt in the game. But other than that, you didn't get a whole lot from the post players in the game against Tennessee.
Yeah, a lot of these SEC teams that are towards the middle and lower of the pack, they do have that problem where they don't have true good big man play. They have a lot of guard play. So that's going to be a recurring theme as we go through these great guards. Just who's the big man? So,
yeah. So for Vanderbilt to have success in the SEC tournament, I feel like the guards have got to stay where they have been. They've got to be the main focal point. You've got to get a little bit from the post. And, if you win a game in the SEC tournament, I consider that success. But of course, I'm not a Vanderbilt fan, but Vanderbilt fans, are you sitting out there saying, well, I really don't want to win a game in the tournament so that Jerry Stackhouse is for sure leaving? I mean, because this season has been a huge disappointment after the run that they went on last year. Locking up the 6th seed in the conference tournament and nearly made some noise there in the tournament too.
Yeah, I wouldn't lie to you. I have a soft spot in my heart for Jerry Stackhouse just because he's a dapper dude.
Yeah.
Anybody who can look that good on the sideline, kudos to you. Hopefully you can coach a little bit so you stick around a while, aka Buzz Williams.
I was going to ask what your thoughts were on Buzz Williams whenever we get there. So
yeah, I have no problem. I'm very comfortable in my skin. I can compliment a man who knows how to dress. So kudos to
Yeah.
those guys. But in regards to how this team's going to perform in this tournament, literally it is going to rely on these guards shooting. If they can get hot and they can get going, a guard can carry you a long way. We've seen it plenty in tournament history past where a good guard can put the team on the back. And we'll see if I think it's Lawrence or Manjon. I think that's how you pronounce the name.
Yeah, I think you're right.
If one of those two guys can shoot above their percentages, I think they're both in that 40% from field goal range. If one of them dudes can go for 50 or 60 through this tournament, they might be able to make a little stunner run, but we'll see how it goes.
Yep. So we'll move on to the team Vanderbilt will be playing in the tournament, and that is Arkansas, who you want to talk about disappointing years. This was a very disappointing year for Arkansas. 15-16 overall, 6-12 in the conference. This was a team that do you know where they were ranked in the preseason as far as the SEC? I mean, I know it was in the top 5, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident saying that they were top 5. I think I had this discussion a few weeks ago. I think some places, depending on which book you read, it was top 3, top 4,
Yeah.
top 5. So for whatever happened, I won't go into the speculations of what was happening behind the scenes, but whatever it was that brought this team together and tore it apart, it's sad. I mean, Musselman has shown that he's a good coach, and it just seems like this team was too much for him to handle this season. So
Yeah, I really like Eric Musselman, and I've been on him for quite a while. As far as being a follower of him, when he got his team into the big dance last year. I mean, they went to the Sweet 16, I believe, and then year before that it was Elite 8. I mean, he's a good coach and he can get his guys to play, but I just think that everything that happened around that program this year just got the best of them, and they had some injuries along the way too. But this is another one of those teams that they don't have any quit in them when they're on the court, and they're very scrappy. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, they're very scrappy. They go out there and they give their best effort each time that they're on the court. Well, what are some of your thoughts on the strengths of this team?
Yeah, Arkansas is very much a team that nobody wants to see. They've battled all season behind Tremont Mark, so kudos to the guy putting the team on the back. I think he's averaging 16 and a half, 17 points a game. The emergence of battle towards the end of the season. Again, 2 good guards that can lead a team, and they've shown they can go out there and they can pick up these scrappy wins. So, if they get through this first round, I forget who they face. I don't have
They play Vanderbilt.
So that they've got Vanderbilt first, and then they'll move on to one of those bye teams. That bye team is not looking forward to playing Arkansas. I can guarantee you.
No, I agree with you on that. And Arkansas, the last couple of games, has kind of gotten hot down the stretch. I mean, you mentioned Battle has really stepped up down the stretch. Trayvon Brazil finally came back after injury, and he's playing pretty good. You've got some other guys as well. Trayvon Mark is another one that's showed up pretty well at times. So they've got the guys. We just mentioned that a lot of it has to do with some of the stuff going around the program. And as far as weaknesses go, one thing that's I really notice at times with this Arkansas team is they like to play a lot of one-on-one type style instead of, swinging the ball around, changing sides of the court, getting the defense to work. And I think that's a big weakness for them is just not being able to tire out the defense. They're trying to take one-on-one stuff, and they can dominate on the boards as well, but there's times where they just get absolutely blown out on the boards, almost like they're just not rushing to get to the basket to get that rebound.
Yeah, I agree completely. Watching this team against Kentucky a few weeks ago when they put up 90, 100 points, I was stunned that they could get that. Seeing what I saw earlier in the season, I watched guys on the court quit. You could physically see them on TV quit. And I cannot stand watching teams do that. So I wrote Arkansas off early in my head. But seeing what this team has evolved into these last handful of games, I think if you can get Mekhi Mitchell to give you quality minutes and not get in foul trouble, if you can get Brazil to give you what everybody expects or thinks he can do, you've got four good pieces right there with your two guards. Like I said, this could be a trouble team, and Lord, let's all hope that they don't make the tournament off of an auto bid here, because somebody's bubble is going to get popped in it, and it might just be one of these other SEC teams. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mentioned already that Musselman is really good at getting his guys together for the tournament. So I'm not going to say that it's impossible for it to happen because, with him as a coach and with some of the talent that this team has, they absolutely can make a run and win the conference here. But it would be a tall task to do it coming out of the play-in rounds and going all the way and winning the title.
Yep. And just because we've seen it before with Musselman, I wouldn't put anything past him. He knows what he's got to do. Maybe, again, this is another speculation statement. Maybe he's already looking at his next job offer, wherever it's coming from, further north potentially. But as long as he's focused and he's got these guys in the right mind, I think they can make a deep run in the SEC tournament, and maybe they just catch that fire and they get all the way to the tournament.
Yeah. So as far as success in the tournament, I feel like for Arkansas to consider the tournament a success, it's not just winning the first game against Vanderbilt. I think that they look at success as upsetting South Carolina, who would be the team that they play in the quarterfinals. I think getting to that would be round 2. Getting to the quarterfinals against, let me pull it back up, against Auburn, I think would be what they consider success at that point. Do you think that they have to get there to consider the tournament success, or do you think just getting past Vanderbilt would be considered success for them?
I think their goal is to get past the first round, and then of course anything after that's going to be icing on the cake. I mean, you had a really disappointing season. If you're going in, obviously you're going to expect to win every game, but the reality is your success is going to be making a deep run in the SEC tournament, you're probably going to get disappointed. So just take it as what it is. Take one game at a time. If you can get past South Carolina, pull that upset. If you can get past the next round, pull that upset, good on you. I'm sure everybody will celebrate like it's the Super Bowl if you win each one after Vandy.
Yeah, I think that's fair right there. I do think that, trying to upset South Carolina would be a tall task, and I'm probably putting a little bit too much pressure on them, but I just feel like the way that Musselman coaches his team, he's saying, this is our game to win once we get past Vanderbilt, but you do have to get past Vanderbilt first.
Exactly.
All right, so now we'll move on to the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia started off this season really hot. They ended up cooling off once they got to conference play, but I'm very optimistic about Georgia under Mike White. They finished 16-15 on the year. They were also 6-12 in the conference. I believe they got the tiebreaker over Arkansas, and that's how they got the 11th seed. This Georgia team has got some talented players on there, and one of them that I'm kind of sick to my stomach about now is Blue Kane, who is actually from Knoxville, Tennessee, and he's as close to an automatic shooter as you can get at times this year. He's a very good player. Georgia is they're another team. There's a lot of scrappy teams in the SEC, and a lot of them are towards the bottom of the conference. And Georgia's another one of those teams that any given night they can beat you.
Yeah, I have a saying in my head when I'm looking at teams in the preview for this upcoming season. I look at the roster, and if I can't remember any of the names on the team, they're probably going to be one of those scrappy teams that I hate to play, and they're going to give me fits down the road. And I still haven't watched this. I've watched this team too many times that I should remember names, but I still could not pull one off the top of my head. Mike White is. I'm sure Georgia fans are thanking Florida for running him out. He's done a great job at turning this program around. He's got a good team with good pieces, and it's not just one guy. Any of their top 3 or 4 guys can give you what you need to win a game any given night. So this is one of the teams that is towards the bottom that I'm more scared about actually upsetting one of those teams that we as SEC fans want to have that deep run and get into the tournament. So we'll see how they do. Like I said, I can't name a particular player to be able to go, yeah, if so and so gives you that, but it's just one guy. If one of those guys steps up, it's going to be his night. Then the next night it could be the next guy. So Mike White's done a good job of pulling this team together. Kudos to him, and kudos for I think they outperformed what their expectations were this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the only reason I remember Blue Cane is, like I said, he's from Knoxville, and he torched Tennessee the one time they played this year, but Tennessee came from behind and ended up winning the game. Jalen DeLoach is another really good player on that team too. But yeah, I'm with you. One of those teams that you can't necessarily remember a player's name. That's that scrappy team that you don't want to play. Some weaknesses for Georgia, though, is they can get very cold at times from three. I mentioned Blue Cane he's a really good 3-point shooter. You give him space, then a lot of times he's going to hit it. But some of those other guys, they get cold from the 3-point line. They aren't great in the post, kind of like Vanderbilt. As far as you get great guard play, but the posts sometimes disappear. Georgia's one of those teams as well, but. With Mike White at the helm, I do have confidence in Georgia. He's a very good coach, and I do think that they outperformed expectations this year. And I think that you give him another year or two, maybe 3, and he's going to have that Georgia team in the top half of the conference.
Yeah, as long as they continue to not forget about their other programs and they let football be football and they still support these other programs, they're doing the right things, but Mike White, given the tools to succeed, he's gonna give you a top half of the SEC team every season, even with the expansion as we go on. But this year they're very guard heavy. I pulled up a box score, so I'm cheating. But I pulled up a box score so that way I could tell you that they've got 4 guards who basically lead everything they do, and they're all averaging over 9 points. So These are the guys I was mentioning that. Any given night, they can pull you where you need to go. They need to be able to do so, and they need to be able to basically make up for their lack of an inside game. I know they got 1 or 2 big guys who can contribute on the rebound side, but overall, this is one of those teams that's going to have to shoot their way to victory. They're going to have to play hard defense. They're going to have to make games ugly in their style. So if they can do that, I don't want my team to face them.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, this is a team that I really feel like, you get past Missouri in that first round, and I do think that's an if. I think that Missouri, just because of how scrappy they play, they can absolutely come out with an upset in that game. But I think that Georgia, if they get past that first one, you might see them pull an upset they would play against Florida in that second game, get Mike White back against his old team. And I think that Georgia took them down to the wire back earlier this year. Florida pulled out a very close victory, but I think they took them down to the wire. So I absolutely think that Florida does not want to play Georgia.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm looking through their schedule right here to see some of their wins. Of course, they took a good one against Ole Miss. All season, I've been very negative on Ole Miss, just a precursor for when we get there. But they do have a couple good wins, a couple good close losses. So, just overall, Georgia's that team that it's like, I don't want to play them. I don't expect them to be great, but we'll see. If when they get to Florida, I think they won by single digits, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. It's March Madness. Anything can happen. So maybe this is the first bracket buster, supposedly.
Yeah, it very well could be. So you mentioned Ole Miss, and now we're going to talk about Ole Miss as they are the 10th ranked team going into the tournament. They started off the year undefeated. but they didn't play a whole lot of teams there towards the beginning. They are 20 and 11 overall, 7 and 11 in conference play. So all of their losses were against conference opponents. So I'll let you start off against Ole Miss since you got some thoughts on them.
Yeah, when you schedule the schools of the blind and the schools of the deaf to start your season, there's not a whole lot of prep for conference play, and I know they were putting up some big numbers against these non-con teams. That now, don't get me wrong, nobody thought Memphis was going to turn out the way they did, so that was a decent schedule. They did beat UCF on the road, so they do have some good wins in there, but overall, I think the true colors, and this is another team. I talked about Arkansas quitting earlier. I watched Ole Miss quit on a couple games, and not that I'm a huge Ole Miss fan to start off, but watching teams just quit when you're in the middle of a game and giving 15 points is 15 points, but you're still playing for something. Every game matters here, especially in the net rankings and the Ken Palm world. So you got to put some effort in. Overall, they're led by a couple guards. Again, guard play dominating this team.
Yep.
Big men leave a lot to be desired on this team. So we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah. So talking about quitting out there on the court, did you watch the Ole Miss Texas A&M game from this past Saturday?
Yes, I did.
I thought that was a terrible coaching decision on Chris Beard's part. I mean, I know it's senior day. You want to get some of those other guys out there that don't ever get to see the court, but man, it was like 8 minutes left, and he had already subbed out his guys and just kind of gave in that game. And I know Texas A&M was up by 20, but still, I mean, crazier things have happened in a ball game, and to see you put in your subs with 8 minutes left to go in the game, it's like, come on, what are we doing here?
Yeah, there's a lot of fandom talk here where a lot of those Rebel faithful seem to think that he may have already checked out for the season. There's a lot of rumors with his name in Louisville, so we'll see what happens there. But this team is very moody. They play, if they're hitting, and they'll go all the way. But that was a bad pun, my bad. But no, if they're hitting their shots and they're scoring like they should be, they'll be able to fight with anybody. But the problem is if they get down by 10, 15 points, you see some of these guys quit on the court, and then it becomes a blowout that you can't recover from. So this is a team. Go
ahead. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this team kind of goes the way Matthew Morrell takes them.
Yeah, very much. They're not even just Morrell, but even Flanagan. They both can take over the game. They both can shoot well. I think Flanagan's more of a complete guard where he can go in and get rebounds. But overall, those two guys dictate how this team plays. Mentioned the struggles with big men earlier. They got huge big guys, and they just don't contribute consistently enough to make an impact. So really, if these guys can lead, then maybe they make a run. Like we said, that they shoot, they get hot, they keep going, but I don't have that faith.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think just I do think that if Chris Beard decided to stick around at Ole Miss, that he can build this roster up and he could bring them into being a contender in the conference. But the question is, does he want to stay around Ole Miss long term? And I know you probably know a little bit more about it than I do, but I just don't see him wanting to stick around too long at Ole Miss.
I mean, obviously what happened with him at Texas is its own thing, and he's got to take what's given to him. Ole Miss was a perfect opportunity for him to jump back in.
Yeah.
Common sense says that the way he took the position, he's gonna use it as a stepping stone. But we'll see. I think if you can get Lane Kiffin to talk to him, which is kind of strange, if you can get somebody who's settled in and seen what Oxford can offer you, what Ole Miss can offer you, maybe he sticks around. But I think some of these bigger programs from outside the SEC are going to be trying really hard to poach these coaches who are in the middle to lower grounds of the SEC coaching spots.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that Ole Miss, they're going to have a tough out in the I guess it's technically the second round of the SEC tournament, as they turn right around and they're playing Texas A&M again in the tournament. So this game could go one of two ways. You mentioned that they've checked out a few times this year, and they did so this past Saturday against Texas A&M. So do you think that we get the Ole Miss team that checks out, or do you think this is an Ole Miss team that comes back with some fire and looking for revenge after the way they just got, let's just call it the way it is, embarrassed Saturday on Senior Day against Texas A&M?
I know this is a foolish take, but I have more faith in the opponent that they're playing to outperform. So this is just kind of a matchup thing for me. Nothing against Ole Miss from my own personal belief. I just have more faith in what Buzz Williams is going to do to prepare his guys and what that roster for A&M is going to be able to do and try to make a run to solidify their spot into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and we'll get to Texas A&M in a minute, but I agree with you. I think I trust Buzz Williams come tournament time a little bit more than I do this Chris Beard coached Ole Miss team right now. I'm not trying to get into the predictions yet, but I just don't think that Ole Miss is going to get past this game against Texas A&M. I don't see them having success in the tournament.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss would actually have benefited from falling further to where they could play a lesser opponent first. But just luck of the schedule, I guess, not being able to execute some of the games they should have executed in, or maybe they outperformed. They should have been lower. Who knows? But yeah, this is just one of those unfortunate pairings for Ole Miss.
So we'll get to the number 9 team now in the tournament. This is a team that you're pretty familiar with, Mississippi State. Mississippi State is one of those teams that a lot of people don't want to play, especially when they're at home. They're one of the 4 teams in the conference this year that knocked off Tennessee. They've got some good wins at home, struggled a little bit away from home, but getting Tolu Smith back was huge when he came back from injury. That was big. I think the Tennessee game was actually his first game back from injury, and he just did whatever he wanted to against Tennessee. Josh Hubbard, he's going to be a very good player, given a little down the road a little bit when he has a little bit more experience. But even as a freshman, he's something else.
Yeah, I will try to refrain from talking your ear off here, but Mississippi State is one of those teams that, like you said, nobody wants to face. But this is a team that has everything they need to be a fully complete team. They've got a scrappy defense. They got a couple guys who can shoot. They got big men who know how to dominate. It's just getting all those pieces to click. Like you said, Josh Hubbard is averaging 16 plus a game. Tolu Smith came back. He came back right before the conference play started. So not that I think he almost got a double-double in his first game in very limited minutes, but having pieces, like having the experience on this team, they brought back every piece that they had last year when they made that run and they got into the first 4. So adding a shooter like Josh Hubbard and adding a couple guys that'll play in very limited roles, you need a couple guys to step up and play above what they've given you this year, because you can't just rely on Tolu Smith and Josh Hubbard to carry your team the way they have been. They need guys like Cameron Matthews and Shaq Moore, DJ Jeffries to contribute and be solid parts if they want to make a run here.
Yeah, I agree, but I think that they could very well make a run here. I do think that getting to play LSU in the first game here, I think that's a great matchup for Mississippi State, neutral court. Now, I will say, as a Tennessee fan, I'm kind of selfish. I do want Mississippi State to win because Mississippi State is the one team in the conference this year that Tennessee has not beaten, which they only played one time. So I do want to see Mississippi State again as a Tennessee fan, but I will say I'm also kind of nervous for the matchup because of how Tolu Smith just dominated Tennessee. That was one of those games where the Tennessee Post players, they got overpowered, and Tolu Smith took advantage. Of course, Josh Hubbard, I think he hit 4 threes in a row at one point. So this is a Mississippi State team that they need to have a little bit of success in the tournament because they're sitting on the bubble right now after the 4-game losing streak that they went on to in conference play.
Yeah, had to remind me.
Well, see, this was the team that went from they were 7th in the conference 2 weeks ago, and I'm sitting here saying they've got a chance to get into the top 5, and then just I don't know what happened, and they kind of fell off the last couple of games and ended up dropping down to 9th.
I don't want to rip the Band-Aid off an open wound here for you, but do you know that team that's just a little bit further north than you guys geographically?
Yeah,
they were blue and white. That's what's happened to Mississippi State. they lost that game against Kentucky, and that loss, the way it happened, it just kept rolling and rolling. You go from Kentucky to Auburn on the road, and that's just devastating for the way these guys play. But they, at that time before Kentucky came in, they just needed one win to solidify their spot in the NCAA tournament. They just couldn't get it. So now their backs are against the wall. They got to step up. They got DJ Jeffries is finally closer to 100% to where he feels like he can be himself again. So if this team can get the contribution that they need from it's these middle of the pack guys, and I'll name guys that you've never heard of, but it's that middle of the pack, that 7th and 8th and 9th guy that comes off the bench. If those guys can contribute, then Mississippi State's going to give anybody a run for their money.
Yeah, I agree with you. They can play with anybody in the conference, and they've proven that at different times. I mean, they beat Tennessee. They nearly came back and beat Kentucky in the last few seconds there. And they got some other good wins on the year as well. So this Mississippi State team is another team that a lot of people don't want to play right now.
If they can hit foul shots and they can limit their fouling, then they'll be just fine.
Yep, I agree with you. So we'll go to the team that they are playing here, who got really hot down the stretch. LSU. They finished off the season 9-9 in conference play, 17-14 overall. This is a team that towards the beginning of conference play, I said, they're going to be down there with Vanderbilt, Arkansas, somewhere in that area, and they just got hot, including knocking off Kentucky at one point towards the end of the season. What are some of your thoughts on LSU?
LSU is a team that it seems to be filled with a lot of these guys who would be considered like middle of the road contributors for most of the top end SEC teams. So I don't think they have a true guy they can rely on. I know they got a couple good scores, but it seems like they're kind of there by default. I know Will Baker, their big guy, stepped up a lot in that middle stretch of conference play. This is one of those teams that I don't understand, because I saw them come out quick and they beat A&M. They beat some of these teams that they shouldn't have, like Kentucky, and it's a confusing team. You see stuff that's really good, and then you're just like, where did that play four series ago go? Where did that go? So LSU does not match up well against Mississippi State. So we'll see if they can find a way to flip the results from the last time when they were in Baton Rouge.
Yeah. This is one of those teams that another one of those that I don't really know a lot of players on the team. Like you mentioned, they've got a bunch of guys that would be kind of middle of the pack on any other team, but they've pulled it together as a team to have success down the stretch here. And I think if they can do that, they could probably beat Mississippi State. But I do agree with you. I think that it's just a bad matchup for LSU going into this game against Mississippi State. I'm fully of the belief that no matter what LSU does, unless they win the conference, they don't have a shot to get into the NCAA tournament because of their non-conference. But this is a team that could have a lot of success going into the NIT probably.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I think this is a solid NIT deep run team. I don't think they're quite there. Obviously, they're overcoming a lot from the previous regime, so it is kind of what it is. But there's some good good pieces in there that just they're good enough.
Yeah, I think this season is already a success for LSU because you mentioned it. The way the program just went into the tank after what was the previous head coach's name? Had all the violations against him.
Was it Will Wade?
Yes, Will Wade. After the way that program just got decimated with the violations, and literally like 11 of your 13 guys left after that, whether it was transfer portal or just not playing basketball anymore. I think you might have one or two enter the draft. I mean, it was a complete rebuild, and for them to finish in the 8th spot in the conference tournament this year and finish off the season the way that they did, I consider this season a success for the LSU program.
Yep, I agree completely. That it's a team that outperformed what their expectations were. Got some key upset wins on the road. Got some good wins at home. So I don't think there's anything you can complain about here. It's a good team that's just getting better with the tenure of the coach.
Yep, I agree. So we'll move on to the 7th ranked team going into the conference tournament. We got Texas A&M. Texas A&M is one of those teams that I'm not going to count out of anything because of the coaching. They finished 9-9 in the conference as well. They had the tiebreaker over LSU. They are 18-13 overall and sitting squarely on the bubble right now. I do think last I looked, Joe Lenardi has Texas A&M as his first 4 out. But Texas A&M could absolutely make a run here in the tournament and play their way into the NCAA tournament. The way the bracket looks right now, they will, if they beat Ole Miss, they will play against Kentucky. And you might disagree with me here, and feel free to tell me if you think I'm wrong. But I think that Texas A&M matches up well with Kentucky. And, they actually beat Kentucky in College Station early in the SEC season. So I think that they match up well with Kentucky. I'm not calling Texas A&M upset over Kentucky in that quarterfinal round, but I think that would be a good matchup for Texas A&M.
Yeah, I won't talk too much on Kentucky because I don't want to spoil my spiel there. But Texas A&M is a team that they know how to play with their back against the wall. They've done it before. I mean, you've got 2 excellent guards with Wade Taylor the fourth, Tyrese Radford. Those guys can do anything they want on the court. They can also miss a lot on the court, but if they can get Henry Coleman to contribute and stay healthy, that's the big thing. This team is one of the best rebounding teams in the country, the best in the SEC. It's not a team that I would want to face at any point from here to April. So,
yeah, I'm with you. I mean, they were another team that knocked off Tennessee in College Station earlier this season, and then Tennessee got revenge in a big way in Knoxville. I'd be nervous to play them a third time this year, but I do think that the strengths that you mentioned there in Wade Taylor and then in Tyrese Radford, there's some very good players there, and then you got Anderson Garcia. He's not a big scorer, but man, leading rebounder in the conference, if I'm not mistaken. He's all over the boards, and he had, I think, 17 in the first contest against Tennessee. The only thing, and this is where the weakness comes in, is who is going to be that next guy to step up if Tyrese Radford doesn't have a good night, if Wade Taylor doesn't have a good night. Who is that other guy? I know Hayden Hefner, he's a very good three-point shooter, but he's streaky as well. You got some other guys that are kind of the same way. So if those 2 guys don't show up in a game, where's Texas A&M going to get that offense from?
Yeah, that's where you've got to look towards the oft injured Henry Coleman. You really need him to be there, be healthy, and contributing. He's a crucial piece to the inside game. He allows Anderson Garcia to get out and get those rebounds, make those plays, give that effort. And, if he's there, it opens things up for Wade Taylor. It opens things up for Tyrese Radford. So it's just that one cog in the entire machine, if it's healthy and good to go, this team looks a whole lot different than we've seen at times this season.
Yep. And I do see Texas A&M as one of those teams because of the players there and the coaching that can absolutely make a run in this tournament. I mean, they did it. They've done it the last 2 years. I mean, 2 years ago they ended up coming from I think it was the 7 seed actually, and making the conference title game against Tennessee. Tennessee did end up beating them in the conference championship, and that was a team that should have made the tournament that year. But they got left out last year. They made another run deep into the SEC tournament. So absolutely, I think this is a team that can make another run and try to solidify their spot in the tournament.
Yep, you can never count out the fighting Buzz Williams. So,
yep, and you mentioned earlier he's definitely one of those sharp dressed men on the sideline, but he never keeps that jacket on very long. He's always down to the vest before too long.
Look, once you get to be a certain age or a certain weight, whichever comes first, that you start to sweat after no time. It's got to go. It's got to go.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So now we'll move to the Florida Gators, who locked up the 6th seed in the conference tournament. They finished off on the season 21-10. They were 11-7 overall. And this is a team that down the stretch, they got really hot at one point. They had won, I believe it was 9 out of 10 games at one point. So they really turned it on down the stretch. What are some of your thoughts on this Florida Gator team?
The Gators, in my opinion, are a team who plays to their opponent. We saw them score 1.5 million points with Alabama and 1.5 million points with Kentucky. It's so hard to determine what the true identity of this team is, to be able to guess how they're going to go. I like their pieces. Don't get me wrong. I really like Walter Clayton Jr. I really like their big guy. What's his name?
Alex Condon.
Yeah, comes off the bench. I like him a lot. This is a team that has the pieces for a tenured run. So if they can outperform this season, that's great. I think they're projected as a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. So if they're already projected there, and this team can mature a little bit, maybe they can make a run. But they've got to find their identity, and they got to play their game and not let the Kentuckys and the Alabamas of the world just run them out of the gym, and they have to try to keep up with their shot.
Yeah, I agree with you. And another thing about this team is they're very young, which is scary for the coming years. And they've got some really talented players on this team. I mentioned Alex Condon there. He's very good. But I will say this team kind of goes the way that post play goes, because he's a true freshman, and you've got another forward that is also a true freshman. Got it pulled up here. Thomas Hall, 6'9" freshman. You've got Micah. How do you say that?
Mm-hmm. Good luck.
Micah Handlogton.
Yep.
Micah Handlogton. He's a sophomore. So, I mean, you've got Tyree Samuel as well. Now, he is a graduate transfer, so he's an older guy, but you've got him, and then you've got a bunch of freshmen and sophomore at the post. So those guys, if they get out of the game, whether it be foul trouble or they just never get comfortable in the game, then that's how they're going to go, is how the post players go.
Yep, I agree completely. Like I said, this team just needs to find their identity, and if they can mature, they can make a run. Maybe it's the ignorance of not knowing what they need to do at this stage. Maybe they can just keep playing ball and make it somewhere they're not supposed to be. Who knows?
Yeah, this is a team that is definitely built to make a run. You mentioned it just maybe a little bit, and I don't want to. I don't want it to sound like we're being rude by saying ignorant, but maybe not experienced enough to know the magnitude of the situation at times of what they need to do. And when they get that experience, this is going to be a very dangerous team.
Yeah, at this point, it's an ignorance is bliss comment. You've got young guys who can shoot, and as long as they can forget that they miss, then they can just keep shooting and get somewhere they need to be. But um, you'll have some of these older guys try to step up and maybe lead these guys. But overall, I think you just play to it. You let the young guys do their thing. You let the young guys be a little foolish and a little crazy and see where it goes.
Yep, I'm with you, and I really do think that Florida could. I think that Florida's bracket here really works out good for them. They'll catch the winner of the Missouri Georgia game, and then depending on if they win that game or not, they've got Alabama. And I think that I think this time around Florida could very well get Alabama. The last one I think it went to overtime, and Alabama pulled it off, if I'm not mistaken. So I think the Florida's hungry for a rematch against Alabama.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, there's nothing out there that we're all like, hey, watch out, Alabama's a hot tamale rolling through here. We don't Nobody wants to face them. So I mean, if you got to pick one of the big dogs that may be struggling, Alabama's the one that I'm aiming for right now. So Florida maybe gets that revenge, and like we said, maybe they're just immature enough that they go out there and don't know what they're doing and then pull off an upset.
Yep, I'm with you. So now we'll move into really these next four teams. They all are second place in the conference, but the way the tiebreaker worked out, South Carolina ends up in the fifth spot going into the tournament. Um, South Carolina finished the season 25-6, 13-5 in the conference. So South Carolina is an amazing story this year because they were picked to finish dead last, and all they did was go out and I think they only lost one game in non-conference, and but it was one of those kind of like Ole Miss where we're like, well, who did they play in non-conference? I mean, it really it was kind of like one of those playing the school of the blind type teams for most of the non-conference, but and they got into conference play and just proved, hey, we're the real deal.
Yeah, when they started conference play, they started against Mississippi State. So I watching that game, I was like, I watched them struggle with big men, and at Clemson, they picked up that loss, and then I was expecting a lot of big man dominance for Mississippi State, and that just wasn't there. And then little did we know that we were watching a tied for second team roll through the first half of the conference play. But shout out to Lamont Paris, SEC Coach of the Year today.
Yep.
Shout out to all those Gamecocks fans who stuck with their team and believed in their team because nobody else did. This team has good pieces. They've got some transfer guys in here who's leading this team. This is just a well put together team, and they've bought in. They've bought into what they have to do, and they're out there trying to play the South Carolina against the world game. So,
yep, I'm with you on that. And you mentioned the guys on this team. You got, of course, your leader, Michie Johnson, and he was named first team All SEC, correct? Or was he second team?
Second team. Yeah,
okay,
somehow they got robbed and everybody was on second team.
Yeah, that's crazy for a team that they finished, like I mentioned, tied for second in the conference, to not have a single guy make the first team. And I feel like Michie Johnson should have made first team, but you got some guys like Miles Studi. He's a very good supporting cast there. See this. Just looking down the roster, this Austin Hero that's on the roster there, I believe he kind of looks like Tyler Hero. I wonder if it's a brother or a cousin or something.
I'm not sure. I haven't dove that far into that one.
Yeah, but anyway, you got Talon Cooper is one of those, or is it Talon Cooper? He's one of those transfer players that you were talking about that has stepped up in a big way for South Carolina this year as well. Lamont Paris has definitely put his name out there as a guy that's going to be a hot commodity come off season. South Carolina need to open up the pocketbooks a little bit if they want to keep him.
Yeah, I've heard his name start to swirl around some of the openings and then the future openings, but something tells me that Lamont might stay. I think he's done a good job starting off, and I think he's building something, and I think he's he's happy with where he's at from just my own personal observations. But I mean, this team is just it's a complementary team. You got Michi Johnson who can shoot all day, and when he's not shooting, you've got guys like Studi who can step up. BJ Mack,
Yeah,
like
BJ Mack is a fantastic player as well.
yeah, he doesn't get the credit he should get. But this guy is that glue piece. He can stretch the four out. He can go inside and bang if he's got to. He's going to hit shots, give you quality minutes. I like the pieces on this team. It's just, can this team continue to roll with? We've seen them have to play off of their game, and if they get off their game, can they keep up with whatever it is? If it's a defensive team, if it's an offensive team, they've just got to be able to adapt, and hopefully they make a deep run here, because I'm not a huge South Carolina fan, but I do enjoy watching this team.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking with one of our friends from another podcast, Skeeter from the Woods Water Mizzou podcast, and we were talking one day about how there's always that one team in the conference, no matter what sport it is, that it's not your team, but you love watching them. South Carolina is that team this year. You love watching them play each time they're on. They may not be the flashiest team in the world, but they just take care of business.
Yep. This is just a solid team. They've got their role players. They've got their contributors. As long as they keep doing what they're doing, this team's just going to be just fine going into NCAA tournament play. They might get upset in the first round, second round, but whatever it is, just remember, you guys were projected last. So anything from this point forward is icing on the cake.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I think is going to keep South Carolina from having a lot of postseason success is they're not a fantastic offensive team. Now, they're one of the tops in the country whenever it comes to defense, just the way that they play. But I did a stat earlier this year before Tennessee played South Carolina. At the time, they had lost 5 games, I believe it was, or no, they had lost 3 games at the time. It was early in the conference. And all 3 of those games, the opponents had scored over 70 points. So that 70-point mark is what I said that Tennessee had to get to. And that game, South Carolina walked into the Food City Center in Knoxville and held Tennessee to 50-something points and knocked them off. So South Carolina is fantastic on defense, just lacking a little bit on the offensive side.
Yeah, I think their lone loss where they didn't allow – well, no, they had 2. They had 2 losses. One was to Tennessee and then one was to LSU, where they did not allow 70 points. But like you said, that's kind of that cutoff there. If they can keep their opponent under 70 points, they can stay right there and outshoot the other team. So we'll see how they go. Like I said, I enjoy this team. I don't want to see them go out early, so hopefully they get a good matchup and they can make a run.
Yep, I'm with you there. So we'll move on to the 4 seed Auburn. They were also 13-5 in the conference, 24-7 overall. This is a very experienced team that I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I do not want to see Auburn again. Tennessee knocked them off in Knoxville earlier this year in their one meeting, and I don't want to see Auburn again. They gave us all that we wanted. Dalton Connect went off for 39 points in that game. You got Janai Broom, who is the he's the guy. He's the guy that everything runs through. You got KD Johnson that comes off the bench. I feel like KD has been there absolutely forever. I'm going to be ready for him to go because he's one of those guys that he is all over the place. You've got Trey Donaldson at the guard. He's a young player, but he's very good. And man, Chad Baker-Mazara, he's a streaky player, but when he's on for this team.
Yeah, I like to explain this team as a firecracker. You know that it's going to get hot in your hand, and then hopefully you drop that thing before it pops. This team is ecstatic to watch at times, and then there's these games where it's just like, well, I guess we got to the end of the fuse. I'm very big on Janai Broom. I really like Jalen Williams' game. Aiden Holloway, I like his game too. But you've got energy guys like KD Johnson and Baker Mazara those guys, they can go over the top sometimes, but it's a Bruce Pearl team. That's what it is. It is
Yep.
what it is there. This is just a team that nobody's going to want to face because you know what they're capable of. But at the same time, you do know that this team's going to lay an egg somewhere.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, I will say, I was talking to my co host Skylar earlier today. We were very surprised, I guess pleasantly surprised about the defensive player of the year because Zakai Ziegler got defensive player of the year, but we were almost certain that it was going to be Janai Broom this year.
Yeah, I think that was a three pony race there between the two you mentioned and Cam Matthews from Mississippi State, but
Yeah.
I think it just came down to there's not a whole lot of good big man play in the SEC, so I think it was more highlighted towards the guard play because of what he's got to face on a night in night out basis. But yeah, there's good pieces here all around, and what's crazy is I don't I don't know if this changed towards the end of the season. I'm pretty sure it didn't, but Auburn doesn't have a single win that is inside of single digits. So that's what's concerning to me as they get into these tougher opponents consistently. Uh, you get you get 3 nights in a row or 2 nights in a row of good opponents. If you got to get down and win that close game, are you going to win it? Because if we haven't seen it yet this season, so what's going to happen?
Yeah, and that's another thing. I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't even know that. But another thing, a couple weeks ago when Tennessee played Auburn, at the time I think they had only won one quad one game. Now they had not lost a quad two, a quad three, or a quad four, but they had only won one quad one game the entire season. So when you get against these good opponents, what Auburn team is going to show up? Is it going to be that? You mentioned that hot firecracker, or is it going to be the one that gets to the end of the fuse and just kind of falls off?
Yeah, are you going to see the team that faced Mississippi State in their house? Or are you going to see the team that faced Kentucky and only they scored less than 60 points?
Yeah.
Or are you going to see the team that played South Carolina and they scored 101? Who knows?
Yeah, but I do think this is a team that is built to make a deep run, not just in the SEC tournament, but in the NCAA tournament as well, as long as they can live up to the moment.
Yep, I agree. I think I always reference Lenardi just because he's the most common. I don't always agree with him, but I think Lenardi has him as a 4 seed, and that feels maybe like it's a little high. Maybe they're more of a 5 seed, but
I was going to say I think I'd put them at about a 5 seed.
Yeah, whatever the case is, I think if they can match up well and stay away from the dominant big men, I think they'll be fine. I don't know how Janai Broom's going to do against the Zach Eady's or like Florida Atlantic, who's got good big man play. Creighton, yeah. These not top notch teams, but they still have good big men who can dominate. So we'll see how they go, see what they get matched up against. But SEC's got a good top half of the conference to show out in the NCAA tournament for sure.
Yep, I'm with you. So we'll move into Alabama, who is ranked third going into the conference tournament. They were also 13-5, 21-10 overall. Now, I will say that record is kind of skewed because they played some very good non-conference competition. I mean, they were one of those teams, kind of like Tennessee and Kentucky, that they scheduled really good non-conference teams, and they just didn't fare as well in those non-conference games. But we'll before we get our thoughts on this, Alex Taylor, who is the host of the Bama Factor podcast, he was unfortunately unable to join us tonight, but I do have a short video clip of him giving some of the strengths and weaknesses of this Alabama team that I will play right here.
The strengths, I think, for the Crimson Tide, for sure, is their offense and their ability to score as well, because I really think if you look at just the level of scoring that they can really achieve, it's really impressive because you have a guy like Sears, you got a guy like Estrada, you have Grant Nelson, Rylan Griffin should be back as well. So their ability to score from just about anywhere on the court, I think is a big strength as well. The 3-point shooting is a strength Also, the past couple of games we kind of struggled from three, but we're really due a game that we should shoot well from three. And if this team really gets hot at the right time, I think this team can really possibly shoot their way to an SEC title and can possibly shoot their way even to a pretty good ways into the NCAA tournament. But as far as that, I think their inside game is also a huge strength as well, and just the length that they have. I mean, you have Grant Helson, who's over 7 foot. You have Nick Pringle, who's 6'9". You have Sam Walters, who's 6'10". You have Wagyu, who is 7 foot. So we have a lot of length on the court, and even our smaller guards like Reitzel and Estrada, they're very lengthy guys. So I think that's a huge strength for the team as well when it comes to having length for rebounding purposes, for jumping passing lanes. I think it's huge for this team. Weaknesses, we have one glaring one, and that's our defense. We finished with the top scoring offense in the country this year. A little over 91 points a game. But on the defensive side, we finished like 341st. And just it's really much the inside part of the defense, especially yesterday. I had the privilege of going to the Alabama-Arkansas game in Tuscaloosa, and just the inside perimeter, like really from the inside out, I feel like we guard the three-point line very well, but we haven't been very fundamentally sound on guarding the back cuts, on guarding high flares, low screens. We've gotten really beat on the pick and roll, especially yesterday against Arkansas early. We kind of caught on to it in the second half, but also Tennessee a few weeks ago as well. In Tennessee, they got us with a pick and roll game. Florida got us with a couple of the back cuts. And it's just all about rebounding and just guarding the inside of the paint. If we guard, we have a good enough offense to win. And so I think that's one weakness that we have. And the other weakness I think we have is just we take too long to get started. Like, we got to jump out to these quick starts. I mean, I see all these other teams like Tennessee and Kentucky, they jump out to these quick starts, these starts where they're shooting, 6 out of 7, 7 out of 8. And, they're getting to the free throw line. We've got to be on the point of attack as soon as the game starts. Like, we can't just wait, 10, 15 minutes to get into a rhythm and then play catch-up. I feel like we've been trying to play catch-up for the last pretty much like a month and a half in a few of these games.
So there was about 3 more minutes of that clip there, but unfortunately I could not bring it all onto the streaming service here. But Alex, appreciate you sending that in to us. I do think he hit most of it right there. I mean, this Alabama team, they can get very hot from three at times, but they can also cool off at times from the three. They do tend to start games kind of slow, but they're a team that when they get hot, and no deficit is too much for Alabama. Unless you run into a Kentucky team that is just red hot, shooting like 70% from the field and scoring 117 points in a game, like what happened in Rupp. But this Alabama team is built for a deep run. The one thing that I think is going to hold them back, and Alex mentioned this as well, is the defense for Alabama. They're not very good defensively, which is kind of atypical for a Nate Oates coach team, but he lost so much from last year's team that he's going with what he's got right now.
Yeah, you mentioned it before we played the clip, but this team doesn't look as good as it could, I guess, because of their early season schedule. You mentioned their non-con was for real. They played 3 quad ones back to back to back, and they lost all 3. In that same stretch, they lost 2 more quad 2, maybe quad 1, quad 2 in a 7-game stretch. So they definitely challenged themselves. So we know that they can fight through the punches. But my concern with any Nate Oates team, and I'm sure Alabama fans will tell me otherwise, but this is a team that relies so heavily on the 3.
Yes,
if they are not hitting that 3, that's when you see these losses come up. And the reality is if it weren't for Ole Miss being in the middle of that, they could have had 5 games right there at the end of it where you were really concerned if they were going to pull out a win there, and that's not what you want this time of the season. So I have faith in what Alabama can do, echoing what we heard there. I am scared to put faith in this team if especially when we get into these big arenas. Is that 3 going to fall? Because if not, we're going to see an early exit for Alabama.
Yeah, because some of these teams like I'll go ahead and say Tennessee, because their defense is so good. When the three's not falling, they can play the game of we could try to stop you defensively and play this low scoring type game. Alabama, I don't believe, can do that just because their defense is not up to par.
Yeah. There's I'm trying to think of what there was a game earlier in the season where it was essentially a track meet and they just stopped playing defense and they just kept shooting. Might have been the LSU game now I'm thinking about it. Ended up like 100-90.
I believe you're correct on that.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to string enough of those games together, especially in these neutral site gyms, different dimensions of the arena. So your vision is impacted, not necessarily the court being a different size, but those angles look different, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, Mark Sears is great. I don't have anything negative to say about him. He can put a team on his back. That Alabama is going to be as good as he can carry them, and for his sake, I hope he balls out. But I'm so concerned with the rest of the team and if they can hit their shots.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So we'll move into the second ranked team going into the conference tournament. You've got Kentucky. Kentucky finished off the year 13-5 in the conference, 23-8 overall. And I'll let you take the lead on this one, being that you're Kentucky guy when it comes to podcasting. We had Jay Hayes on earlier this year on our podcast before Tennessee and Kentucky played in Rupp. I wonder if he mentioned anything to you about possibly collaborating, because we could have had you on as well. But I wonder if he was just kind of trying to take over there.
Jay's a busy man, and he forgets to pick up his butt if it's not attached. So, Jay loves to talk, and he does a good job. He is a good fan, and whether or not it's Kentucky or any other program, it's just he enjoys watching good ball, and it just happens to be that Kentucky's quality ball most of the time. So
yeah,
he's always going to support those guys all the way through. In regards to this team, Kentucky's just I just for the record, I am not a huge Kentucky fan. I've got Kentucky fans all around me. I podcast with a Kentucky fan, but I'm supposed to be the voice of reason for him. I try to make sure his head doesn't get too big. But there are so many pieces on this team that are scary, that you've got a guy who averages 10 points a game who starts, but he doesn't play but, I don't know, 25 minutes a game. If you get guys like that are contributing high points, and this is the scariest offense in all of NCAA basketball, like, no, I'm not trying to say that Alabama's not right there, but Kentucky can nail threes, they can drive, they can turn you over, here recently they've been able to play some defense too, and it's just crazy if those pieces can all start to click. Those freshmen, the freshman is this team. If they can mature and get things together, this is going to be a team that can lose in the first round, or they can make it all the way to the final. Who knows?
Yeah, and that was the one concern I had for Kentucky early in the season was, can the defense come around? And here lately the defense has started to come around a little bit. This is a typical Calipari coach team where they are young, because so many of their players they're one and done, going straight to the NBA. So he's constantly having turnover each year, and it takes them a little bit to get into their groove. And they've gotten really hot here lately, the past couple of weeks. And you mentioned the freshman on this team, Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepherd. Reed Shepherd was just named SEC Freshman of the Year. Dillingham was named 6th Man of the Year, and both of them made the All-Freshman team. I really think that Reed Sheppard is going to be named National Freshman of the Year as well. I mean, I've been vying for that for the last few weeks, him being named National Freshman of the Year. But this is a team that when they're hot, man, there's no stopping them. I mean, we saw this past Saturday where Reed Sheppard was 7 of 10 from the 3-point line, and he's on the season over 50% on average. Kentucky shot 52% from the 3-point line this past Saturday. The one concern that I have for Kentucky now, because I think that their defense is starting to take shape, is can the post players kind of step up and fill their role as well? Because Saturday, the only players that scored in the game were guards. I mean, you had DJ Wagner, I think, had 8. You had Justin Edwards coming off he starts, doesn't he? Justin Edwards, or is he off the bench?
Yeah, he typically starts.
Yeah, so Justin Edwards, I believe he had 14 in the game. You had Antonio Reeves and Reed Sheppard both with 27. Dillingham was up around the 15 mark, I believe, or he might have been closer to 20. So you got the guards, but you got players like Thiero got in foul trouble and didn't score in the game. You've got Trey Mitchell didn't do much in the game against Tennessee. Yet Big Z, he's a big presence there, but at times he's non-existent on the court. So can Kentucky get the post presence going into March to keep up with to help their guards out, I guess, is my big question.
Yeah, the Kentucky team, they play the hot hand when it comes to the big guys. Unfortunately, Trey Mitchell's been hurt quite a bit towards the back half of this season. So if I don't think he's going to play at all let's be smart here. If he's been hurt, Kentucky has a propensity to not care about the SEC tournament, especially under Coach Cal. I don't expect to see Trey Mitchell. So they'll play the hot hand when it comes to the big men. You've got Big Z, who's he's a big flash player. He's going to give you those big plays. He's going to take that outside shot. He's going to get you excited. Then what you didn't see, or what most people didn't see because they just saw a 0 next to points, was Ugana Onyenso have all those blocks this weekend. And
yeah, that was big for Kentucky in that game, was the blocks.
Yeah. And you've got to have what Kentucky lacks a lot of is physicality. And that's where you're talking about Thiero and you're talking about Justin Edwards. If you can get some quality minutes out of Edwards, Thiero, and Onyenso, then you're going to be all right for most of the teams that you play against.
Yep, I agree. And this is a team that can definitely win the conference tournament and can make a deep run into the NCAA tournament as well. I mean, that it's just the way that they're built.
Now, I'll tell you something. They will not win this conference tournament.
You don't think so?
Coach Cal don't care about the SEC tournament. He's said it, but many times. He much rather put this thing at the front of the schedule. I'm stealing this direct quote from Jay, by the way. He'd much rather put this at the front of the schedule, let it be. Coach Cal he doesn't prioritize this. He would much rather maybe win a game. If you got to lose one, just don't get blown out. Don't put yourself in a bad situation going to the NCAA tournament. But they're focused on making it all the way to the Final Four and beyond. So
yeah,
I wouldn't expect Kentucky to go out there and put a ton of effort into these games. But at the same time, the raw talent's there. They could just show up and potentially beat some of these teams. So,
yeah, I agree with you. So we'll move on to the conference champion for the regular season this year, Tennessee, 24-7 overall, 14-4 in the conference. This was Tennessee's first outright SEC championship since 2008. Tennessee this year, they got their guy with Dalton Connect. I mean, you had a lot of pieces over the last couple of years, with Josiah Jordan-James, Santiago Vescovi, Jonas Adu, Zakai Ziegler. You got those pieces, but you didn't have that one go-to player like you do now with Dalton Connect. And, that, in my opinion, I can't remember the guy's name, but I saw it on TikTok earlier. It's another guy that does a Tennessee podcast. They said it perfectly today. And I'll give a shout out to them. Once I looked the video back up, they said Dalton Connect is the best player in the country, but Zach Edey is the most dominant player in the country. Would you agree with that right there?
That's hard to say just because I've seen Dalton Connect come out and dominate against good SEC opponents. I mean, let's be real. If anybody's played any amount of basketball, take out a big man, you put your butt right on his knee, and you just push. I don't fall in love with the big men who just dominate, and I mean that's what they do. But at the same time, I have more respect for Dalton Connect's game, or even some of these other guys who are being mentioned in National Player of the Year communications. But they're both great players. Connect, just when you can go out there and you can drop 30, 35, 40, it's hard to determine whether or not you want to let him beat you, or if you want to try to try to let everyone else beat you, because there are the pieces there. It's just they haven't had to. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and that's one thing I like about this team is, you do have games where Dalton Connect is the reason that you win. That happened against Auburn where he dropped 39 once again and, led Tennessee to victory. And he just absolutely took over in the final 13 minutes and scored. He outscored Auburn by himself 25-21 in the final 13 minutes. But then you've got games like the Alabama game where he only had 13 points, but you had Zakai Ziegler with 18. I think Jonas Adu had 15 in the game, something like that. You had other guys step up. The one concern I have for Tennessee going forward is, are they going to try to rely too much on Dalton Connect? Because we saw that against Kentucky this past Saturday where the other Tennessee players, they did not show up at all in the first half. And for the majority of the second half, they didn't show up. Now, Dalton Connect scored 40, but the rest of the team only scored 41 points total. So that's the concern that I have for Tennessee going forward. Other than that, I'm really excited about this Tennessee team this year, but I want to hear your thoughts on it, because I know I'm the Tennessee guy here. I'm a homer, but I want to hear your thoughts on what you think about Tennessee.
I've said it a few times now on our Religiously Kentucky podcast. Tennessee is the most complete team in the SEC right now. They've got guys who know their role. They've got guys who play defense. They've got guys who step up and hit shots, and they know that Dalton Connect is the guy who's going to carry your offense. That's what you brought him in here for. You just need to be able to get enough from Adu and Ziegler and Jordan James. I think this team can be very successful if you get 13 to 15 points from Adu, you get 8 to 10 rebounds from him, you get 12 or so, maybe probably 12 to 15 from Ziegler, and then you get some other guys just to drop in 8 to 10 points. And if you can get that and overcome the Rick Barnes factor, because I've heard it from your own fans, there's the Rick Barnes curse there. If you can get over that and get those points and that contribution from these players, this is a team that has the capability of getting a number one seed in the tournament and making a run.
Yeah, and I'm not over here calling national championship, but after the stretch that Tennessee went through at the end of the year and the way that they beat Auburn, Alabama, and South Carolina, I'm on record saying Tennessee will make the program's first Final Four this season. And I'm still sitting here saying that they'll make the Final Four. I'm not calling national championship, but this team, just the pieces that they have and the way that they play ball, especially on the defensive side of it, I think this team could make the Final Four this year.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to get somebody else to step up and help Connect to get past that Final Four step. But I think I was going to ask you about it. Would making a Final Four, just making it, not maybe losing in that Final Four, would that be enough for a successful season, or would you be disappointed not getting to a national championship if you thought the team was capable?
Well, I'll go ahead and say this. Skylar and I have talked about it a few times this year. We consider success for this season for Tennessee making the Elite Eight, because Tennessee has only made the Elite Eight one time in program history. They've never made a Final Four. So we think it's unfair to just sit here and say, well, it's Final Four or bust this year when you've only made the Elite Eight one time. But I do think that you need to make the Elite Eight this year. Otherwise, it is an unsuccessful year. That once again factors into the Rick Barnes curse of, he can coach a great regular season, but he can't do anything when it comes to the tournament. So I do think it's Elite Eight, but I'm calling Final Four.
Yeah, I think getting to the Final Four and making a national championship will get a big monkey off your back, especially on social media. So I think the pieces are there. It's just somebody else has got to step up just a little bit to help out Dalton, so that way he don't get tired, because playing Thursday, Saturday, or Friday, Sunday, whichever it lays out to be, that's going to be a lot for a guy trying to score 30, 40 points every night. Yep,
absolutely. So that takes care of our team preview real quick. Let's run through and give our predictions on how we think the SEC tournament is going to go before we close out here. So we will start off with the 11-14 game. That is Georgia and Missouri. Who do you have winning that game?
I'm going to lean Georgia. I just don't think Missouri is going to be able to put anything together.
I'm actually going to go Missouri here, and I tell you what. Let me actually share my screen here. I can pull the bracket up so both of us can look at it. There we go. So I'm actually going to go Missouri getting their first conference victory in this game. I do like Georgia. I like what they have. I like Mike White as a coach, but I think Missouri has played too well this year at times not to get one win in conference play, even if it is in the tournament.
Yeah, right. I could see it, but I'll ride my Mike White coattails.
Yep. So we got Arkansas and Vanderbilt on the other side. I'm going to take Arkansas in this one. I think that they got hot down the stretch. They might have figured a few things out. I do think that they beat Vanderbilt in this game.
Yep, I agree with you there. I think Arkansas is the hot hand, and I'm still a little nervous about that coaching situation. Maybe that's some background noise that makes these guys not focus up.
Yep. So we got Mississippi State and LSU in the 8-9 game. Who are you picking in this one?
I'll avoid being the homer, but I'm still going to pick Mississippi State.
I'm with you. You mentioned it earlier. I just think it's a bad matchup for LSU, so I'm going to take Mississippi State to win this game as well. So we've got Arkansas and South Carolina in the second round. I'm going to take South Carolina in this one.
This is where I think Arkansas will actually pull an upset here, because playing that hot hand the first game, they'll be hot and ready to go. I think this is a game that Arkansas will pull off.
And I could definitely see that. I'm just I'm going to stick with South Carolina, just continuing the narrative that they've had this year, the Cinderella year, I guess you would say.
I'll just keep doubting them.
Yeah. So we got Ole Miss and Texas A&M. I'll let you go first on this one.
I'll never pick that team that's a 10 seed. We'll go with Texas A&M.
I'm with you. I trust Buzz Williams a little bit more, and I just think that it's a bad matchup. I asked you the question earlier, do we think Ole Miss actually shows up and plays in this game, trying to get revenge for the embarrassing loss to Texas A&M last weekend? And I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Texas A&M runs away with it.
Nope, I'll be happy to see them on the bench watching this tournament from the sidelines.
Yeah. So in the bottom half, I've got Florida versus Missouri. You've got Florida versus Georgia. I am going to take Florida in this game.
Yeah, I don't like either team coming to upset Florida here. So whichever way it would go, I would pick Florida here.
Yeah. So we'll go back up to the top. Tennessee playing against Mississippi State. I am going to take Tennessee in this one. I think this is a game where Tennessee gets a little bit of revenge for the game back earlier at the Hump, and Tennessee beats every single team in the SEC at least once this year.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the game that determines who comes out of this top half of the bracket. Both of these teams got a lot to play for. Mississippi State's just still trying to solidify their spot. Tennessee's trying to lock up that number 1 spot. I think that this is where rest is going to be beneficial, and I think Tennessee will be able to stand behind Connect and pull through.
Yeah, I will say, though, Mississippi State matches up very well with Tennessee, so it'll be a very good game.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see if Cam Matthews can keep enough energy in the battery to be able to keep up with Dalton Connect.
Yep. So I've got Auburn versus South Carolina in this next game. You've got Auburn versus Arkansas. I'm going to take Auburn to win this game, but it's not going to be that 40-point victory that it was back earlier in the jungle.
Yep, I think Auburn's going to squeak one out here. I think they're going to continue their trend of not having a single-digit win. I think they'll get to 11.
Yep, I think I'm with you there. So we've both got Texas A&M versus Kentucky in the next one. I'll let you take this one first.
This is totally playing to the Kentucky fans here. We're going to go with A&M because they're actually going to show up and play.
Oh, so you're calling the A&M upset?
Yeah. Well, if Kentucky shows up, they can shoot them out, but I think Texas A&M is going to have something to play for, and I don't think Kentucky's going to be worried about it. They'll be fine with whatever seed they got, and they'll be focused on the NCAA tournament.
I got you. I'm going to take Kentucky to win. I just think that neutral site Kentucky is going to show up and play a little bit better than Texas A&M. I do expect Wade Taylor to have a big night just because he always shows up in the big moments, but I am going to take Kentucky to advance to the semifinals. So we've both got Florida versus Alabama in the quarterfinal game. I'm going to take Florida to pull the upset over Alabama in this one. I just feel like after the close loss back earlier to Alabama, they're going to come out with some fire, and I think Florida makes the semifinals.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I'm concerned with Alabama's 3-point shooting and how much they rely on it. With how much they lost and the unfamiliarity with this gym, I'm gonna ride Florida here too.
Yep. So top half of the bracket, we both got Tennessee going up against Auburn. I'm gonna let you go first because I'm not ready to say what I'm about to.
All right, I'll be the sunshine pumper here for you. I think Tennessee is going to be playing hard for that number 1 seed, and I think they're going to try to overcome all of the obstacles of what Rick Barnes can do, or what Rick Barnes has not done, and what Dalton Connect has to do, and what these guys behind him have to do to help him. I think they're going to try to overcome here, try to lock up that 1 seed, so that way they can get a less impactful first round game.
Yeah, I really hope that you're right here. I hope that Tennessee wins, but I'm going to say that this is just a bad spot for Tennessee. You beat Auburn just a couple of weeks ago in Knoxville in a game where Dalton Connect took over. Auburn is going to remember that, and I think that neutral site here, Auburn does squeak out. I think this is a game where Auburn finally gets their first win under 10 points. I do think Auburn squeaks one out here against Tennessee.
We'll see. I still think, even though you said neutral site, I'm pretty confident that there's going to be plenty of orange in that stadium.
Well, there's going to be plenty of orange no matter where the game is played because the Tennessee fans travel very well. So we have got, both of us picked Florida, correct?
Yes, we both have Florida. You got Kentucky, and then I have A&M.
Yep. So I'll let you go first with Florida versus A&M here.
I'm gonna ride the 2 top guards in this game, so we're gonna go with A&M making it to the championship.
You got A&M making another big run here.
It's the Buzz Williams special.
Yeah. So I've got Kentucky against Florida. I'm gonna ride the hot team as well. I'm gonna say Kentucky makes the SEC championship game here, riding the hot shooting from Dillingham, Shepard, and Reeves. So you have got a matchup of Tennessee versus Texas A&M, a rematch of 2 years ago. So who do you have winning the conference tournament?
I'm going to ride the same outcome. No. I don't know here. I think I'm going to ride the guards. I think I'm going to stay with with Texas A&M solidifying their NCAA tournament berth with the auto bid.
So you've got Texas A&M winning over Tennessee in the conference championship game and solidifying that auto bid. I've got Kentucky versus Auburn. I do have Kentucky winning the conference championship here. I do think this is going to be a closer game than the one that was played in the Jungle, where Kentucky just embarrassed Auburn. But I do think ultimately Kentucky does get the win here. I think they've got the better matchup against Auburn in this game. So a little bit of discrepancy here between the two of us with our picks, but.
Look, you're trying to jinx one team. Don't act like this wasn't scripted. You came in here and you picked the rival opponent to go all the way. We all know your game.
No, you can ask Skylar. I said Sunday that I think that Kentucky's going to win it. I just think that Kentucky is getting hot at the right time of year. So that's why I've got Kentucky winning the conference tournament. But I do think that any one of 7 teams, any one of the top 7 teams could win the conference tournament this year.
Yeah, really, I think all the way down to LSU's got a shot. Just if LSU can get past Mississippi State, can they match up against Connect? And if they can, I think that's a good path for them. So there's so many good teams all the way down through that middle of the pack. SEC, I'm sure they're going to get embarrassed in the NCAA tournament because that's how it always is when I have confidence in what quality there is. But I like Texas A&M's team to be able to make a run here. I like Mississippi State to be able to make a run here, and those are 2 lower seeds, and that says a lot for what the conference has done and what the conference is capable of in the tournament.
Yep, I agree with you. So, Jaron, I appreciate you coming on with me tonight to doing this conference preview. You want to give a shout out to your social medias and where people can find you?
Yep. You can follow my personal account. It's Jaron, JARON _033. I also partner with Sidelines Sports Network, so I'm responsible for the Sidelines SEC account, which is SSN _SEC. Or if you're really dying for some Mississippi State content, you can follow me there, SSN _Hail State. And then you can hear me talk every week with a lovely Kentucky fan on the Religiously Kentucky Sports podcast on every streaming service.
Yep. Well, Jaron, I appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely have you on again at some point. There's something big coming within the next month, and Jaron's going to be a part of it with Jay Hayes on the Religiously Kentucky podcast. So we'll definitely be having Jaron on some when that happens. So we cannot wait for that to happen. But this is Michael Allen from the Vol Fanatic Show, and we're looking forward to a big week of SEC basketball this week. Appreciate you tuning in. Jaron, thank you again for coming on. And guys, we will see you the next time.